Hi, and thank you for joining me on another episode of the Tech Exec Podcast, where I'll help you create teams worth leading, because life's too short to lead a mediocre team. As always, I'm your host, Aviv Ben-Yosef, Tech Executive Coach and Consultant, and our subject today is someone like you. But actually, not going to find someone like you. This is about something that happens way too often, but I would say probably more often with first-timers when it comes to their leadership. And if this is your first time running an organization, you might be having this issue without even realizing it. And that is that when you're looking at your team or you're thinking about how they're going to grow, about what changes you want to do, your assumptions about what is possible, how things should develop, etc. Looking at your team, in general, you might be making the mistake of thinking that you can make them behave like you, or that with time you can find more people who are closer to you. And yes, of course, it's perfectly fine to try to get people who are, in general, on the same page. But thinking that you can get a team that's essentially a bunch of minions or mini-me's that can do things essentially like you do is just wrong. To ensure that you understand what I'm talking about, here are a couple of examples that I've seen recently with my clients. One was where I was talking to a CTO who kept talking about the fact that I don't understand why my people don't work as hard as I do, don't think, enough about the different things, even off work, etc. And I stopped and said, hey, first of all, you have to understand, they are not you. So naturally, they don't think similarly. But even more so, they are not you. You are a CTO. You have a substantial stake in the company. You are a senior leader. It makes perfect sense for a senior engineer not to be as completely involved as you are. Yeah, of course, we want to get people who care, people who are not there solely for the money, etc. Putting all of that aside, even when we get those great people, even when I've had the opportunity to work with people who were tremendous and were intrinsically motivated and always want to keep improving, etc., I did not fool myself that these people care as much and should work as hard as a co-founder, as a C-level executive. They're not getting the same compensation. They don't have the same probability of getting rich in a startup environment, etc. And therefore, it just does not make any sense. And add to that the fact that you look at things with the context that you have that rarely will your people have. So they cannot even be like you when it comes to the decisions and how they view things, because you ought to be aware of many more things than they are. So you understand things about what's happening all over the organization much better. You might have a close rapport with a bunch of your peers in the executive team, etc. And therefore, they cannot, and you should not aim for them to be like that. What does that mean for you right now in your organization? First of all, it means that you ought to learn how to drive growth of people without just trying to copy and paste whatever you know from personal experience, whatever has worked for you so far. Instead, you want to ensure that you find the different stepping stones, the different milestones that we can use with people to help them improve without the final destination being solely what you yourself have done in the past. Add to that the fact that when we're looking at your team and trying to evaluate where it ought to go, we want to ensure that the team does not just try to mimic whatever you're doing to feel good about itself, to pretend that, yes, they are your mini-me's. Another example is another VP of engineering that I'm working with. And when he described what he was seeing, he was very annoyed, I'll use that word, to describe how the people who are senior in the organization do not seem to be as relentless when it comes to finding a different way of tackling things, reaching out to people all over the organization in order to solve something fast, etc. Now, again, you might create that sort of a culture. That's perfectly fine. That's actually something that, in general, I think is better rather than worse. And yet, rather than lamenting that that does not automatically happen, realize that, again, they are not you. You, as a senior leader, just, built in, have way more opportunities and cachet in the organization so that you can reach to other people in the company, talk to them, and immediately get more attention, immediately have them err on the side of trying to help you out rather than deciding, okay, this is not worth my time, etc. So there are so many things that are way easier for you to do with your amount of influence in a company as opposed to the people reporting to you. So again, they are not mini-me's, and you have to keep that in mind. So when you want them to do things differently, when you want them to have the ability to go throughout the organization, throughout the company, get people involved, move things, etc., you have to actively create that sort of culture, enable that for them by giving them a public mandate to do it, so people know that they are your champions, they are responsible for that thing, and whenever they something, it's essentially an extension of your decisions in a specific realm in the company. And you have to provide them with that support system so that they can actually make things happen. At the end of the day, it's not as if anyone in engineering can act as if they were the CTO or the VP and gain the same amount of attention all over the company, right? That's not how things work. So if you want to see your people gain the ability to be real change agents throughout the company, you have to make that possible for them. It's not going to happen by itself. All that to say that, yes, your team can make dramatic changes. They can become much better. Your culture can always just improve. All of those are why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I believe that teams can always get better and get much more influence, have a lot more impact and value for the company and its customers. Nevertheless, we get there not by trying to cloning you as special snowflake as you are, but by enabling each person to maximize their own potential and do things that are amazing by their own. That's it for this week. If you have any questions or comments, my email's in the show notes, and I'm always happy to hear. If you haven't yet, do check out my newsletter, where every week you're going to get this podcast, an article, another video, and some extra free goodies. And I'll see you here in the next episode. Ciao.